Hi, I'm Joy, and this is Pilates Perspectives. Today we have Gordon Troy and Ken Endelman to talk to us about the Pilates trademark lawsuits. Now, before we get started, let's take a moment to check in. Okay, so today's sense are your ears. So unless you're driving, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and open your ears. What does it mean to open your ears? Well, it's not anything I'm going to physically see, but what I'd like you to tune into is what's happening around you. Now, if you are driving and your eyes are open your ears and listen to the car, the sounds of the car. So wherever you are now, take those sounds and turn your head, if you can, to the right. Can you listen behind you? Now, when you're listening behind you, something really interesting happens. Do you see how much rotation you actually get in your head? That when your senses lead, your body follows. What's happening behind you? Can you tune into a sound, a person's voice, a dog barking? Now come back, face turning toward the front, and let's have you now turn to the left and listen behind you. Do you hear the same sounds, the same voice, the same dog barking? Or is there something new you've tuned into? Now bring your head back to its center with both ears open. How much of your environment can you tell just by listening? Do you hear wind? Do you hear water? Do you hear the sounds of feet? Do you hear other cars swishing by? Is there silence? How do those sensations make you feel? All right, so thanks for doing that with me. Today, our guests include Gordon Troy, attorney at law, most known for his work on the initial Pilates trademark lawsuit. More to come on that soon. And Ken Endelman, who is a defendant in the first lawsuit, who has a whole other perspective for us. You can find Gordon at his law practice at webtm.com or in the description below. I'm so excited here to talk with Gordon and Ken. Our topic today is going to be around the Pilates trademark lawsuit. Gordon, welcome. Ken, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, so my first question is, now that I have the two of you in front of me, is how long have you known each other?
We actually met because of the litigation. So that was first in about 1995.
And so tell me, how did that happen? How did you first come across each other? Gordon, from your perspective, how did you find Ken Endelman?
Well, actually, it's the other way around. Kenny
Ken
found
found you. Mm-hmm. How'd that happen?
Well, you had a fantastic marketing department. So
so Kenny's referring to my sister and my mother. And the fascinating thing is that, so my sister had scoliosis surgery when she was 13, and her doctor was retiring. And this is back, I want to say, I mean, we can actually kind of pin the time frame, but it was somewhere right around the time that Kenny, you came out with the TSSR. And so anyhow, her doctor was retiring, and she went to see him for one last time. And all he said was to her is, well, you should, because she was complaining about her flexibility decreasing and all that kind of stuff. What happens as you get older? She had a Harrington rod. And he said, well, you should do Pilates. And at the time, being in New York, the only Pilates in the phone book was Sean Gallagher's studio on 2121 Broadway. And my sister and my mother went up there and looked at the place and basically looked at each other and said, well, Dr. Goldberg couldn't have meant this. And because the place was kind of weird on top of the Fairway Market, and you climbed this rickety stairs. And so anyhow, they eventually found themselves at the Canyon Ranch in Lenox. And at the time, Joan Breitbart and what do they call it? The Pilates Institute, I think, Kenny?
It was a Pilates Institute, yes.
They had a quarterly publication that they did. and they had one there, and my sister then joined the Pilates Institute and saw that there was an advertisement for Current Concepts, which is now Balanced Body, and one thing led to another. My sister thought that she could just buy an apparatus and learn Pilates, and after they spent a week at the Canyon Ranch, and she's talking to Kenny about it and ended up buying the TSSR. And somehow or another, that conversation, and Kenny could probably relay this better, morphed into Kenny starting to tell my sister about this trademark problem they were having, and specifically about, Pilates and what was going on. And my sister said, well, you should just call my brother because he's like an expert in genericism. And at some point after that, Kenny called me, and we had multiple conversations before even the lawsuit was filed.
Ken, that was like a big stroke of luck. I mean, here you have this customer, and this customer turns in to give you one of the best pieces of advice that you could get.
No, it worked out phenomenally well because I mean, number one is I was in a situation I knew I was about to get sued, and I was really scared because I didn't know what to do, who to talk to, I didn't know I didn't know how big of a problem or how big of a gun I was staring down the barrel at, right? And I'm talking to Gordon's sister, and she knows somebody, and she knows someone that I might be able to talk to, and it was kind of like, just call this guy. It's not going to cost you anything to talk to him. And at first I didn't want to, but then as time was passing, I was getting closer and closer to the time when I was going to get sued, and I had good representation for patents, but not for trademarks, and zero experience in litigation. And so when she said, call this guy, call my brother, and it did help that she mentioned that you were part of the team that resurrected the Jeep trademark. I thought, he's got some clout, and I'll talk to him. And then when I talked to him, and kind of like the first words that came out of his mouth were avoid litigation at all costs, which is like sounded pretty good to me because I like things that are, cheap. So, so I called him, and that's how it came down. Yeah.
So, if we wanted to avoid litigation at all costs, we all know how the story ends. We ended up in litigation. So let's back up to how you ended. Let's walk through the steps that ended up in the litigation. So, Ken, let's talk about what led Sean to ultimately, sue you.
I mean, I don't know exactly what the steps were on his side. I know that in early conversations with him when we were still talking, and at one point we were even doing business together, he actually said to me, he said he was going to save the best for last. And he did do that. But what happened is he was, and Gordon, you understand the strategy probably better than I do, but his strategy is to get, what are they called? Letters of agreement, or
Well, I think he wanted you to enter into a perpetual royalty agreement
yeah,
to use Pilates because he claimed to own it.
right.
And what's a
And
perpetual royalty agreement?
That means that Balanced Body would be paying a percentage of its revenue to Sean Gallagher for the privilege of using the word Pilates.
In perpetuity. Yeah.
Yes.
Just ongoing. So that was, so Ken, you had some business dealings with Sean prior to that.
I did, yeah, because at one point he came to me and he said, this is, when he got into the industry, and he had bought the trademark, he needed to build equipment, and he came to me to build his equipment for him. And so at that point, I knew that he bought the trademark, but I told him at the same time that I'll make equipment for him, but I'm not going to treat him any differently than I would treat any other customer.
Right. Did he
And
like that
so
answer?
he seemed to. He probably just didn't believe it, or he never thought it.
Or he didn't take you seriously about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could have been.
He tried to use his ownership of this trademark to bolster his position vis-a-vis Kenny.
Yeah.
And and then if I recall correctly, he started then having suggestions about changes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. Like as I think on that. So basically, he would own the trademark, and then he would have equipment that he was also getting a royalty on the trademark from, and so that would really sort of corner the market, wouldn't it? That would really put it, or back the market into a corner.
And to be clear, the royalty he wanted was on all sales, not just to him.
Yeah.
Right. So anything you
and-
sold to anybody.
Exactly. And anything Pilates, period. It wasn't, if or even if I made a reformer that wasn't what he would consider an authentic reformer, he would want a royalty off of that.
Right. And to be clear, you'd already been selling reformers for a long time, right? This is not like this was a brand new thing.
Yeah, it was 20 years at that point. I'd been doing this. Yeah.
So it just strikes me as like the magnitude of this just really sort of caught up to you really fast, right? So now you've got to make a decision on this. Like, so did he file a suit against you, Ken, or did you have to file, meet Gordon and file against Sean?
Sean sued Kenny on January 3rd, 1996, is when the case was filed.
Yeah.
At that point, did you have Gordon in your back pocket, or you were still figuring out, what kind of gun you were looking down?
I'm trying to remember. It was right around that time, but I know that I was still. I know that at that point, John Wall was still talking to Bressler, but I also knew I was talking to you at that same time because I called. I remember talking with John and said, "Should I hire this guy?" And John said his credentials check out.
Oh,
so, but I don't remember.
He checked out your credentials, Gordon.
That's news to me.
Yeah.
All these years you didn't know.
No, he actually kind of. I mean, I asked him for his opinion, and he cleared you. Yeah, which is great.
So let me ask. Hey, Gordon, was this at the time? I mean, he couldn't have only been suing Ken, right? So were there other lawsuits at play here?
Oh, yes. So before Ken was sued, and actually, let's just be clear, both Kenny and his company, Current Concepts, were sued in the lawsuit for using Pilates. Okay, that was the original case that was filed. Prior to that, however, he had brought suits against a whole bunch of people. I believe the number was somewhere between 10 and 12. I was trying to actually look through my notes to remember how many there were. And to individual Pilates instructors and their studios. And as far as I know, there were only two that were pending at the same time that the suit was filed against Kenny. And that was Will Green, Georgetown Body Works, and Deborah Green, who is a second generation teacher from Corolla Trier.
Right. So Deborah Lesson, Deborah Green. Yeah.
At Green Street Studio. Deborah Lesson from Green Street Studio. Yeah.
Yes. And that was really kind of important because Kenny said to me, I had to go my first appearance in court. And I want to say it was like April, May 1996 timeframe. And Ken says to me, it was just a status conference, which is something the judges do after the initial filings and all this kind of stuff. And Ken said to me, you really should go meet with the attorney who's representing Deborah Lesson while you're in New York. And I was like, okay, I'll make that happen. And that's when I met my colleague Lawrence, who he and I have basically since then have worked together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yes. And so Kenny is responsible for Lawrence and I working together for all these years, and specifically on the Pilates suit initially. But what was interesting was at that point in time, they had really not done any discovery in the case or anything, and Deborah was giving Lawrence free Pilates lessons for her services. And I had, after discussing with Lawrence, the brilliant idea that we should file a motion for summary judgment on the basis of genericism. And he and I wrote that motion for summary judgment, and there was a hearing on that. And what's really important here is that in that hearing, Bressler, Sean Gallagher's attorney, basically said to Lawrence, because Lawrence was the attorney of record, he knew that I was going to countersue on the basis of genericism to cancel his Pilates trademarks. Will you agree to live by whatever decision comes out of Kenny's case? And of course, Lawrence says, yeah. And then that case got dismissed.
Mm,
But the problem was, from a legal viewpoint, is that Kenny was only sued regarding equipment, not regarding providing exercise instruction services, the education.
right.
And it was because of that that Lawrence and I had come up with the class action.
So tell me a little bit about the class action. So for a lay person, let's just sort of set this stage. Ken is making equipment. He's using Pilates in the name. He's sued by Sean Gallagher to basically cease and desist with the use of Pilates. Ken says no to giving him royalties. He finds Gordon Troy, and he decides to countersue and say on the guise of Pilates is a generic term. Do I have that correct?
That's a great synopsis.
But in the process, there are other lawsuits around it. Ken is making equipment, and these are education providers or teaching Pilates. They're more Pilates instructors.
Right.
So Ken's lawsuit is similar, but not exactly the same as. So in order to kind of encompass everybody, you had to start a class action. Is that why the class action came to be?
Yes, yes. And they basically, they meaning Sean and his attorneys, saw this as a bonus of an opportunity to be able to bring all of these people together in one forum, because Joan Breitbart had previously, through the Pilates Institute, had tried to cancel the Pilates registrations on the basis of genericism. And let me just say that the attorneys who represented her did not understand what they were doing and were unsuccessful.
So Joan Breitbart, who ultimately went on to create the Physical Mind Institute as a result of what was happening here with Sean, right?
Yes.
All the key players are now falling into place. So she had a prior lawsuit that didn't go well?
It was in the trademark office.
Interesting. Keep going, Gordon.
They did not do what they needed to do. So out of that came the class action, and Sean and his attorneys agreed to the class action. So we didn't even have to go through class certification process, which is typical of what happens in a class action. But the beautiful thing that occurred from that is that through the course of the litigation, so here we are in late 1996 until we get to trial in 2000, Sean Gallagher's attorneys are sending out cease and desist letters to hundreds and hundreds of Pilates instructors.
I got one. Yep.
You got one too?
I got one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so most of those people would then contact my office, and we would send a letter back to Ken Bresler, that was his attorney. Please stop communicating with our clients. They are part of the class. And during this period of time, Pilates exploded.
Yep.
I mean, it was quite fascinating. I'm not quite sure it was because of the lawsuit, but I'm just all occurred at the same time.
It was the first surge, the first Pilates surge, certainly in our, and it was a market surge that yeah, absolutely corresponded to this time period, because when I opened my studio where I got a cease and desist, I literally opened my studio, and 2 days later there was another Pilates studio on the corner. So from nothing, right? Boom, boom, there were two. And it just kept proliferating at the same time that you guys were fighting this lawsuit.
Yes. And also what's kind of interesting in that 4.5 year time frame, one of the things that we did, and Kenny was great at this, is we hired a clipping service. Newspaper, I know that in the day of the internet, people don't know what a clipping service is.
And microfiche and yeah.
And all that kind of but is you hire these companies that basically would scour newspapers and magazines and stuff, and all they were doing was looking for the word Pilates.
Right.
And in that, relatively short period of time, we somewhere more than 5,000 clips, of which we boiled them down to somewhere in the order of about 3,000 clippings that we had to put in a binder and organize them and give them to the judge to demonstrate that Pilates was a word that was used throughout the country to describe this method of exercise.
I still have that box of clippings, Gordon, and it's about half the size of a refrigerator.
Oh, do
So,
you really? So
yeah,
even back then, Pilates was become as it was sort of in its an original ascendancy, right? It became sort of a media darling. So now you have all this evidence that Pilates is a form of exercise,
Yes.
right? A generic form of exercise. So that ends up working in your case, right? As part of your defense.
Well, the defense became an offense.
Right. Say more about that.
Well, it was just the way. Okay, so clearly Kenny was defended, but we countersued on as the class action to demonstrate that the trademark was generic, and that countersuit is really the offense.
I just want to point out, because I think it needs to be made really clear, because people sometimes I've heard them state that Current Concepts sued Sean Gallagher. Current Concepts never sued Sean Gallagher. He sued us first. He sued me first.
Mhm.
I was trying to avoid being sued in every way possible, but he just wouldn't relent.
Yeah. So Ken, when we were discussing this, you said that, you were willing to work with him, right? But
Mhm.
you really felt like you had no choice.
Right. No, he was like, it's one thing to protect your rights if you really have the rights, right? But it's another thing to go after people and accuse them of doing something that they weren't doing wrong anyway, and then punishing them for doing what was perfectly right to do in the first place anyway, right? So he would not just send cease and desist letters to customers, and these are like not just mom and pops. These are mostly mom one person studios, and
Yep.
they use the word Pilates. Like, you should use it, right? Giving credit to the man that developed this fantastic form of exercise. And then and then what he would do is he would say, "Give me all the information based that you have the word Pilates written on," and then he would turn and use that information to actually file a lawsuit against them.
Hmm.
So, and then he went just like, let them sign a settlement agreement, let them go on with their life. He would make it hard for them to sign a settlement agreement and make them waste money on, I mean, I love lawyers, Gordon, but waste money on lawyers to get this guy off their back, And so if you're a one-man studio and you've got four reformers and you're trying to make your day work, and then all of a sudden you've got to pay a lawyer for 4 or 5 or 10 hours of his time, right? To get rid of this nuisance that you should have known how to deal with in the first place. Just imagine how that makes you feel and what impact it has on your business and your ability to run your business. And then they would have to write, and Pilates is a registered trademark of Pilates Inc., and give a phone number.
Right. Yeah, he was
Yes.
forcing them to advertise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Forcing them to advertise on his behalf. Wow.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so Ken, you wanted to stay out of litigation at all costs, and you find yourself just walking, a 4.5 year journey, into
Right.
the courtroom. What was that like for you, sort of, for your business, for, taking on sort of all that responsibility of these lawsuits?
It's a big question. I had, until that point, I had never been in a courtroom for anything other than just a traffic ticket. Um, so I had no idea of how big these things were. I had a little limited understanding of what the vocabulary was because I took some pre-law classes when I was at UCLA, but that was my experience. And so um, it's horrible because you don't know when it's going to end. You don't know how much it's going to cost. You don't know how it's going to go. And as good as your lawyers are going to be, they'll never promise you that they can win the case. Never. They never do.
Mm.
They say, "Oh, you've got a really good chance," and you have to just believe them, right? And so, sorry, but at the end of the day, you never know exactly how things are going to turn out. So you just have to take it one day at a time. And this is a really long case. And for me, it was running the business with one hand. On the other hand, talking to people about the case and about their future, because now you've got people that are scared to use the word Pilates to describe what they do, and they could not use the word Pilates and risk having a successful business, or use the word Pilates and risk getting sued. And that was their choice. And you, Joy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You had to
Hmm.
make that choice. Are you going to do it or not? And fortunately, there were so many people in the Pilates industry that had the spine to say, "Screw it. I'm gonna use the word because that's the right thing to do."
Yeah. I remember when I moved to Sacramento, and I was clearing things out, I found a big long page of just different words on the page where I was trying to figure out, could I convey that I was a Pilates studio without using Pilates in my name? And
Hmm.
I just put
Hmm.
it was like a whole bunch of different word jumble.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, I was like, I'm just going to leave it.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I'll fight this battle if
Hmm.
if it truly comes to it. I wish I knew about the class action. That would have been interesting.
I wish you did too, because we were very blessed that we had, I don't know, there was probably more than 1,000 people that actually donated money to the class action so we could actually do what we needed to do in order to prove that Pilates was generic.
So, Gordon, why a class action? What was the benefit of doing the class action? And I think it's kind of interesting that Sean and his team saw it as an opportunity.
They were probably getting pretty fed up, or the lawyers, or Sean, about paying the lawyers to do this, that there were, that they were having to send out all these cease and desist lists. I mean, in the grand scheme of life, okay, as an attorney who practices trademark law, and I've been doing this now for 40 years, is I have never in my life sent out hundreds of cease and desist letters on behalf of one client.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If
Okay.
I got
I
one,
mean,
hundreds of people got them.
that
Yeah,
would be like a
yeah,
red flag to
yeah.
me, that like maybe there's something not quite kosher here. So that being the first step is that I'm sure it was costing them a lot of money. So they were all keen to it because it was like, wow, they thought that they were going to get a single solution because of Joan Breitbart and the Pilates Institute agreeing to change their name to Physical Mind, and that would kind of be the end of it. And then all they had to do was deal with Kenny, and they discovered it was a much bigger thing. The class action. So class actions, the basic predicate of a class action is that you've got a group of similarly situated people that are too large to name. So therefore, you have representatives, and I don't remember who we used as representatives. I think Deborah was one of them, that represent these common interests.
Hmm.
And so from that viewpoint, they thought it was a score. They were like, wow, this is great. We can take care of all these people because now we finally have this in front of the court on behalf of all these people.
Right. So in one engagement with the court, they have 1,000 people plus. And if they win, whoever's practicing, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Whoever is in the world of Pilates at the time.
yeah. There was a lot more riding on this case than I even understood.
And what's interesting is it was at the final pretrial conference, which occurred a little more than 2 weeks before the trial actually started, the judge canceled the class.
Oh, really?
Yes. Which was great for us because that meant we focused the actual trial on the use of Pilates on apparatus. And from that flowed the use of Pilates for exercise instruction.
Is it unusual that they dismissed the class?
Uh, she did it right from the bench without even a written decision, and we were all kind of like a little like dumbfounded. But she said, I want to simplify this trial because she said basically her reasoning on the record was that, well, if you prove that Pilates is generic for the apparatus, then it's generic for everything.
And this is Judge Cedarbaum,
This is
Miriam
Judge
Cedarbaum.
Cedarbaum. God was looking on our over our shoulders by giving us that judge.
Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. So she, in essence, consolidated, thinking, one actually will satisfy the need of the other. If
Yes.
you, wow.
But she did also say that I'm not going to rule on the use of Pilates Studio or registration of Pilates Studio because she said that that's really a different trademark,
Hmm.
and just focused on the word Pilates, ultimately finding that it was generic, among other things.
Well, that was also kind of a gift wasn't it? Because by making it that global around the word Pilates, then if you call yourself a Pilates studio, but if Pilates is generic, then you can call yourself a Pilates studio, a Pilates instructor. Am I reading that right?
Yes, except that Sean had a separate a separate trademark registration for Pilates Studio,
Oh, I see.
which now speed forward to the PMA was a separate case that I brought on behalf of the PMA to cancel Pilates Studio on the basis that it was generic. But that cancellation was really focused on, so I'm sorry to get a little out of order here. So after we get the ruling in October of that Pilates was generic, and Sean's attorneys did not want to go up on an appeal, and we didn't want to go up on an appeal. So we did a settlement around the decision. And the settlement was this, that they, meaning Sean Gallagher, had to, because Pilates was generic, had to disclaim the word Pilates in their Pilates studio registration and their New York Pilates studio registrations. Now, in the Pilates studio registration, they already had the word studio disclaimed because it's descriptive. And you can't have in a word mark consisting of two terms both disclaimed. So the trademark office rejected their attempt to disclaim Pilates. And in that interim period, they filed a new application for Pilates Studio, disclaiming Pilates, but not disclaiming Studio. And that's what the case was before the trademark office, which ultimately found that Pilates Studio was generic as well. And that case was brought on behalf of the PMA with Balance Body, Stott, and Peak as the principal equipment manufacturers, basically funding my efforts to do that. And it was that I think was about 2003, Kenny, I would think. Sorry, I haven't looked at it in a while. And what was really wonderful is that, so I guess we're kind of talking about the PMA right now. What we can talk about how the PMA came together, but at that point in time, it was really marvelous that almost the entire community came around the PMA and said, okay, let's all sing Kumbaya together. Let's stop finger pointing and saying they're not doing Pilates. They're not doing Pilates. Let's figure out how we're going to all go forward together. And my interaction was with as much with the three major equipment manufacturers, and they were all the same way. I mean, it's like friendly competitors. I mean, it was a really marvelous time.
It's really interesting because when the PMA came to be, I didn't realize that behind the scenes was sort of this coming together around the drama and the trauma of the lawsuits. I mean, in many ways, a lot of that kumbaya is probably associated to, all of this strife and just saying enough of that. Let's face this head on.
For sure. I mean, the PMA was born basically at the evening of the party that we had in New York at Howard Seychelles Power Pilates Studio, celebrating the win. I mean, Kenny, you remember? I mean, it was 50 or 60 people that came to the pre-meeting where Kevin Bowen and what was her name? Glenn. I forget what was her first name.
Colleen Glenn.
Colleen Glenn.
Yeah.
Basically had this whole proposal for creating a not-for-profit organization that would represent the Pilates community.
I'm going to go grab the picture right now.
Oh, you even got a picture. So while he's doing that, let's actually go back to, I think many people listening to this have been fans of Law and Order. There we go. Can you get it in there, Ken? So who's in that photo?
That's Gordon, right?
Right.
I'm the one with the beard.
You're the one with the beard.
That's me.
That's Kenny with the mustache.
Okay, you're the only two who are in focus, so move it over a little bit.
And then Danny Ball.
Is on the far right. Next to him is Bob Fogelnest, who helped me try the case.
Yes.
Danny Ball represented Will Green.
Uh-huh.
It was a big assist for all of us working collaboratively.
Um, do you want to talk about why we hired Bob Fogelnest? Do
Well,
we want to go there?
Well, I think you have opened that can of worms. Let's go there.
as we were preparing, as we were in the preliminary stages of preparing for trial, I was concerned that this was going to be a trial bigger, even though I brought the case all the way to this point, bigger than I had ever handled before. And Lawrence was Bob Fogelnest was a really good old friend of Lawrence, and he was actually a criminal defense attorney. And he just had just amazing gut instincts. And interestingly enough, about a month before we got to trial, all of a sudden they show up with more documents that should have been disclosed to us years earlier.
Mm.
And we basically at that point, I said, because I was bringing Bob up to speed about the case. We hadn't fully decided that he was going to actually try the case yet, with me, and I was like, "This is your deposition," and he just did the most amazing job. I remember, not only then, but there was also some times during the trial where I would lean over to Kenny and I'd say, "Buckle on your seatbelt," because we're about to go down a path that none of us ever thought about. He was just an absolutely brilliant litigator,
Yeah.
and he was a fantastic part of the team.
So what happened with all those documents? Did they get it brought into evidence, or was he able to get a lot of that
None of them mattered.
tossed? Yeah,
But of
none of
course,
it.
as lawyers, we make big deals over things like that.
Yeah. So let's actually go back to the actual trial itself. You had some of the folks that we would call today the elders
Yes.
testify. Who were some of the names that testified?
Well, before we actually got to them testifying, we also I met and I interviewed many of the other elders. I'm just trying to think. I think I have a list of them. So, I mean, ultimately, Kathy Grant, Ron Fletcher, and Romana Krasnoska testified at trial. But I had interviewed Mary Bowen, Lolita San Miguel, in connection with this case, and
Mhm.
meeting them, and they were just fascinating people. And each of their stories about how they came to Pilates was just as fascinating. And of course, every single person, there was some injury.
Yeah, yeah.
There
That was the
there was a
the
single
commonality.
thread. There
Yeah,
was some
yeah,
injury at some point in time,
yeah.
but what they did with it was fascinating.
So
But
elaborate on that, Gordon. What do you mean by that?
well, okay, so
Or give an example.
well, as you know, if anything, Kathy is absolutely famous for the work that she did in really developing the chair exercises.
Right.
And that all came about because she had this really tiny space at Bendel's that she worked in, and the chair was just such a perfect vehicle for her to do all these other things. I think she had a chair and a trap table, right, Kenny? I don't think she even had a reformer in that space because it was so small.
I never got to visit her when she was at Bendel's. I only got to see her when she was at Tisch.
Yeah, I
So,
just
and
remember
that,
talking with her about it.
mhm, yeah,
Um, and so uh, because Romana was in Gallagher's camp, so to speak, so she was actually the first witness at the trial.
Mm.
And at lunchtime, the Gallagher's attorney said, "We really want to recess the court and go and show you what a Pilates studio looks like." So we go up to Drago's, okay? What was that, 56th Street or something, 57th Street in New York. And Romana supposedly teaches some random client, okay, and goes through the whole thing. And there's a court reporter taking this all down, and Romana gets.
You got all the wait, Gordon, you got so you got all these people wearing workout clothes that are at the studio, right? And now you've got all these people wearing suits, right? But I
And
think
the
Judge
judge.
Cedarbaum, yeah, she was wearing a and they're all standing around. Then you got this guy, like a court reporter, actually typing on this stuff, right, and trying to follow people around as we're looking at the equipment, and we're asking questions. So go ahead, Gordon. Sorry, I
Okay.
had to add some color there. Yes,
That is a lot of color.
yeah.
I know. It was really kind of.
And you all walk into Drago's. And was
It-
it staged? Do you think this?
I think it was staged to some extent, because one of the things that we had said, we'll do that as long as that we have an opportunity, when it's our turn, to be able to take the judge to see what a balanced body studio looks like,
Mhm.
and what that's like, and which we never ended up needing to do. And because the most important thing was is that after Romana took this woman through a basic reformer, I mean, I think we all today would probably call it pre-Pilates.
Right.
It was not anything beyond basics. Uh, but gets through the whole thing, uh, puts her hands on the woman's ankles after she's all done, and they're on the foot bar, and Romana asks her, "How was that?" And the woman answered, "That was different."
Hmm.
And you could see in the judge's face at that moment, she got it.
Yeah. So what would you say that light bulb was? What do you think went through the judge's mind at that moment? Why was saying that was different? Why was that key?
Because she understood that we were talking about a method.
Mm.
And there's a fundamental principle is that methods are protected by patents, not trademarks. And for Sean to try and capitalize on the Pilates method by using the trademark to silence everybody else, which is what he was trying to accomplish,
Mm.
was an unsanctioned way, okay, to try and accomplish that. It's just not within the law.
That's so fantastic. So she ended up working against the cause.
She did not help Sean's case on that.
Yeah, she did
And
not help
but
Sean's case.
but now when it came our turn, so it was her, and then it was Sean. I think the order was I don't remember, it was Romana, then Sean, and then their expert, or their expert might have gone before Sean, and their expert had a real problem in that his definition of genericism was wrong. And that's what he tested. And that's what we punched holes in at trial. We conducted our own test, the survey. Okay. Surveys are done in trademark cases all the time, particularly in genericism cases, as well as in likelihood of confusion cases. So we put on Ron, okay. And if you'd ever met Ron, you had to love him. He was the most ebullient, upbeat, exciting, interesting person.
Mm.
And he just completely wowed the judge. It was really remarkable. And then at some point after that, we put on our expert, and little did we know was that the judge, her undergraduate degree was in statistics, and survey evidence all comes down to statistics. And in
Mhm.
the middle of the testimony, the judge takes over, and the next thing you know, the judge is having a direct conversation with our expert standing at a blackboard in the courtroom.
This is like a Law and Order, episode for
It,
sure.
it was truly remarkable. And the judge understood the basis, the statistical basis behind why we were proving that the trademark was generic.
Thank you to Balanced Body for making Pilates Perspectives possible. Looking for Pilates equipment that combines innovation, tradition, and style? Well, Balanced Body has something for everyone. Whether you're in a studio or practicing at home, our products are designed to elevate your practice and give you the tools you need to move better. Balanced Body products are proudly made in Sacramento, California, with unparalleled high-quality materials from the wood to the upholstery. Visit Pilates.com to explore our collection.
Interestingly enough, so we ended, I'll never forget, we ended on a Friday afternoon. The case wasn't over. And I had been continually trying to get Kathy Grant to testify. So I call her up again. This is long before cell phones. or the widespread use of cell phones. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, because those of us that had cell phones, we had to lock them up downstairs in the courtroom.
Oh yeah, we had to lock them up, but you could
Yeah.
use the pay phones that were in the courtroom. And I call and I speak to her, and she said, "Let me think about it. How about we meet for lunch on Sunday?" So we met for lunch on Sunday, actually in Hell's Kitchen area. It was me, Bob, Kathy, and her husband, which really was not very far from where the original Pilates studio was on 8th Avenue. And we had lunch, and we're all done with lunch, and she seemed to be warming up to it. If you knew Kathy, she was very reserved. So she said, "Let me think about it. Call me back at home later that evening." I call her back later that evening, and she says, "I'll be there tomorrow morning."
And you won her over.
Well, I later found out that it was Lolita, because Lolita and Kathy were always the best of friends. Lolita convinced her that she had to testify.
Oh, Lolita convinced her. Interesting.
Yes.
It's also interesting that Lolita was there just in case Kathy did testify too, because we both wanted them for the same reason.
So why was Kathy so important? Why was her testimony so important?
Because she's the one who was, well, first of all, Kathy and Lolita were the only two people that were actually certified by Joe Pilates in Pilates. A whole roundabout way, but there was a program back in that time frame, I think it was in the late 1950s, where the state of New York was trying to help dancers go on to new careers. They had some sort of funding mechanism through the New York State University, and Joe Pilates became part of it somehow, and they're the only two to actually have gotten certifications by Joe through the New York State University. Romana never did. And Romana was the one who always claimed that, she was the blessed person to carry the torch.
She was the heir. Yeah.
Can you, I always thought that one of the most amazing parts of, the trial was when Romana was on the stand. And of course, she was the lead witness for Gallagher. And the way her testimony came out, and I believe it was just because she was just told the truth, really helped us. But I think that's important to talk about that, because she obviously didn't do what she was told. She didn't say what she was told to say.
Clearly not.
Yeah.
She did in all the depositions that we took of her, and she didn't in a trial.
She didn't stick to the script?
She did not stick to the script.
So what did she say, or what was she saying that was different than what she should have said?
Well, she affirmed the fact that Joe and Clara had taught many people to teach Pilates. She affirmed the fact that there were a lot of people that were being taught Pilates, that there were people educating other people to teach Pilates, who we now call the second generation teachers. So she wasn't sticking to Sean's speech, which was, we're the only Pilates, and if it didn't come out of the Pilates studio in New York, then it's not Pilates.
Right.
Her cross-examination at the trial, we were very careful. because first of all, she was elderly, and as lawyers, we don't look good beating up old people.
Is that taught in law school?
No, that's like kind of a human thing. Um, you learn more about lawyering outside of law school than in law school, trust me. Uh, and we just we just massage those facts to demonstrate that Pilates was a method and that there were lots of other people that were doing it, and she recognized that.
And was there anything in particular that she said that for you, sort of sitting there in the courtroom, surprised you?
That's a difficult question. I'm not sure I really have an answer to it because um, we had taken so many depositions in the case of Romana and Sean that as well as, I mean, 50, 60 other people. I mean, at which we got that testimony in through the transcripts in the case that the judge read, and we had to focus the judge on what pieces we want read. So surprise is kind of trials are not Perry Mason. The trials pretty much happen how you choreograph them in advance.
Interesting. And I mean, Ken, what was it like for you in the courtroom?
I'm sitting in this courtroom. I'm wearing. At this point, I now have 3 suits in my life because I bought them off for the trial, and
One pair of nice shoes.
yeah, one pair of nice shoes. Yeah, no flip flops. The way that it's set up is that I'm sitting there with there's 2 tables, right, one behind the other. In the front table, there's Sean sitting with his 3 attorneys, and then it's me sitting with my 3 attorneys. We're sitting right behind Sean. I'm looking at his backside during this whole time, and then watching this whole thing unfold and trying to follow it because it's happening pretty fast. And I didn't know enough to know, was this good or was it bad, right? And all I knew is that, and Fogan has told me this ahead of the time. He said trials are like football games. Some days you pick up some yardage, and some days you lose some yardage, right? And so I'm trying to. We're going this day by day because I think wasn't it like 11 days in trial, Gordon?
Yes.
It was 11 days. And I'm trying to figure out each day, we're talking, did we gain some yardage or did we lose some yardage, right? And most of the days we gained, and then some days I felt like, man, I've totally screwed this whole thing. And then I'd show up in court the next morning and find out, no, we didn't. No big deal. You think 5 years have just gone to waste, right? And then this is the res judicata thing. Then we show up the next morning and it was like, everybody's bright and sunny. They asked me like 20 questions and the whole thing's over with. And so it went from total doom and gloom to rainbows. So, but just watching that and watch this whole thing unfold and kind of experiencing the experience, but just kind of knowing that you're this close to the goal line and you still don't know. You actually go through all 11 days and you still don't know, even at the very last day, you don't know if you've won or if you've lost. You just have a feeling. And it really takes until you actually get that decision and you finally hear about the decision that you know whether you've won or lost and how well you've won or how badly you lost. And so it was a big deal. It was a big deal, and it was crazy for me. I don't know what it was like for you, Gordon, but I mean, we all spent so many years on this thing, and it was finally coming to an end, and and it was,
we were committed to the win for sure.
Yeah.
And interestingly is that so at the end of the trial, the judge ordered something that's done sometimes in civil cases, sometimes not, is she ordered both sides to have to brief the trial and all the evidence that was presented, submit them at the same time. Then each side was to, file their objections to whatever the other side submitted first, and then each side got what's called a reply to counteract whatever the interim what they had said on the other side.
This is before the ruling, so that doesn't always happen, right? So,
No, it does not.
so does that trigger any anxiety in your brain, or
Oh
did
my
that?
God. We worked basically, I mean, the time frame to accomplish that. So the trial ended in the middle of June, and I would say that we were briefing into the middle of August.
Mhm.
Because what the judge was looking for us to do was to basically synthesize what she was going to then be able to pull out of the case for her decision, which ended up being 90 odd pages.
Right. Wow. Wow. Um, the Ramona thing is interesting to me because do you think she was like affirming the truth or prioritizing being honest? Or do you think she was being honest and didn't realize that it actually was counter to Sean's efforts? I know that's speculating on behalf of someone, but it's an interesting. I think she was just being completely honest.
I would go with the latter.
I think she
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
being honest within her framework
Hmm.
because she probably saw. So after, I mean, you need to understand is that after uh, Joe died and they set up the Pilates Studio Corp to carry on the business, so that the people who were behind that had a place to go and to provide for Clara in her, aging years. And she was the only person around at that point. So she was, because she had just come back from, where was it, Peru? She had lived.
Peru, yeah.
Yeah. So, she kind of felt emboldened, I think, and then worked with various different people. First, Larry Stanton, and then who was kind of the money guy. Aris Isotoner, the glove company, if you remember them.
Right. Yeah.
And then Wee Tai Hum came in with all these grandiose ideas of how they were going to create Pilates education in the mid 1980s. And Wee Tai either was underfunded, overextended. I don't really know, but basically they shut the doors of the Pilates studio on April 1st, 1989, and everyone who was there training at that time. I mean, what was it? Carrie Regan. There was Kenny. You might remember the names of all these people.
Carrie Regan, Phoebe Higgins.
Phoebe, yeah, because Phoebe ended up going to Howard Seychelles, and basically they went walking out of the studio with equipment and pictures and everything that they could possibly put their hands on,
Huh.
because the tax collector was coming or something like that, that it was, or the landlord, I don't know, that was shutting them down. I never got a clear story as to exactly how it shut down, but that was the fateful day, April Fool's 1989. And it
Yeah,
was
it's funny. That part of the story has always eluded me. The whole isotoner moment, and then that little bit with Wee Tai was always just sort of like a bunch of stuff happened and they got shut down.
right,
Like that.
right. And one of the key things is that, so Sean in 1992 basically says, I'm buying the Pilates studio and all of its assets from Wee Tai Hum, who's now been closed for 3 years.
Mm.
Okay. And this was another key piece of the decision, was in the determination of fraud, is that he bought trademarks from a non-existent entity that was not in business. And the key principle there is that trademarks represent goodwill. And you have diminishing goodwill if you're not in business. This is also what Sean has used for the current set of litigation that is going on, over the copyrights.
Right. So I was going to ask you, like, that was going to be my kind of my next question, or
Okay.
my lead in, was that it doesn't end. This didn't end here, right? There's additional litigations that still continue today and persist today.
Yes. Yes. So I'll give you as short a summary as I can on it, because it's still pending.
Mm-hmm.
is there's a lawsuit pending again in the Southern District of New York where Gallagher sued Mary Kelly and True Pilates Boston for posting on Instagram images that were widely available online and have been for years and are in the New York Public Library and the libraries of
Mhm.
Harvard, the University of Maine, and a lot of other places. But a lot of these images were disseminated from years of Romana just giving out pictures. Because if you've ever seen the slide strips, is Romana was always giving these out. She testified to that when in the main Pilates litigation, and these were widely distributed. But the thing is that Sean claims, incorrectly claims, I would say, that he acquired the copyrights in all these photographs when he acquired this from Wee Tai Hung,
Hmm.
from the defunct Pilates studio. So he cites that purchase, which um, was a failed theory in the main Pilates litigation, and it's going to be, I think, a failed theory in the current litigation because he basically just owns a copy of photographs. He doesn't own
Hmm.
the copyright. They're two completely different things.
Yeah, so there are a lot of images out there that I know people are waiting to see the outcome of this lawsuit to before they hopefully get to start to use these are images. So not only did at that point Sean buy the entity, but he thought he bought the rights to these images. Am I correct?
Right. There's images. There's also film. There's the whole bunch of stuff. Joe was constantly doing a lot of interesting things, trying to memorialize what the Pilates, uh, well, he called it contrology, but
Right,
the Pilates method was.
right.
And I mean, the mere fact, if you saw, I mean, even in what appears in Return to Life, the slide strip images of the various different poses. Well, when you think about in the late 1930s, early 1940s, when that book was first created, from a photography viewpoint, to do that at that point in time took some real skill in order to be able
Mm-hmm.
to capture those movements at the various key points in the movement.
Right.
And to me, I don't know if you really want to talk more about this lawsuit that's ongoing, but for me, I view that all these materials are in the public domain for a variety of reasons, my pleadings are very clear about why uh, I am of the position of that, and I think ultimately we're going to prevail on that. It's just a matter of time. Um, I don't believe anyone should be able to claim this because what it's doing is the world should be in a position to learn as much as possible from the origin of the exercises that Joe Pilates invented and created that have become the Pilates method. There should be unfettered access to these materials, and ultimately, I think we're going to declare that the copyrights are invalid. I mean, I know, I know that Ken feels the same way about this because,
Mm.
knowledge is a wonderful thing. I mean, and that's how people learn.
And this is the Free the Archives lawsuit.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
You could search online, find it, Free the Archives, or also known as the Pilates Transparency Project.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And where is this now? Because it's still pending. Like, what's the process now for this lawsuit at this point?
Uh, oh, sorry. Uh, we're kind of in a holding pattern because his lawyers keep wanting information that they're not entitled to, and we're fighting them on it. We're actually because the case has been on hold for more than 2.5 years now. We're going to give them stuff that they're not entitled to, but we're going to object to them using it. And then we want to get to the end of discovery because at that point in time, the judge is going to finally allow me to file a motion for summary judgment to demonstrate that Sean Gallagher is not entitled, that there is no copyright, one, and two, that he never obtained a copyright. So I mean, it's a twofold argument, because all the stuff was created so long ago under the old copyright statute that for Sean to have even published the book that he did in, what was it, 1992, I think, Kenny, that which is really how he's now claiming to own the copyright, is just again a misuse of the law.
And doesn't he claim to own copyrights to stuff that's not in the book?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the real problem,
Yeah,
is that
right.
he basically claims to own anything and everything about Joseph Pilates and the method of exercise.
Yeah.
And without definition, which is why he's sent hundreds and hundreds of Instagram takedowns, for example, which is why through the Pilates Transparency Project, we've been able to fund this litigation, because Mary Kelly on her own couldn't possibly fund what it takes to do this in this litigation.
There's a pattern of behavior, back in the late 1990s, you had cease and desist, and today in modern day society, you have Instagram takedowns.
Right. But there's a key difference here, though. And that is that in the 1990s, the way you got your word out was as you advertised in the phone book, or you advertised in the local newspaper, and to let people know that you were around. Okay, today you post on Instagram or on Facebook, and
That's
what's going on in my studio, and we've got this happening and that happening. I mean, it's a completely different world from that viewpoint of how individual studios are marketing themselves. I mean, even here locally, there is no phone book anymore.
I know. Do you remember the penny saver? Does anybody remember the penny
Yes.
saver?
Oh, yes.
It's true though, Gordon. It would be just like somebody saying, we're going to take your phone away from you and we're going to take your sign away from you, and try and stay in business. You just
Yes.
can't do that. You need to have social media in order to stay in business. And it's not like he said you have to just take his supposedly copyrighted material down. It's your whole site comes down, right?
Well,
That's what happens.
yes, it's not just the one piece that he's complaining about, because whether it be Google, Meta, X, take your pick, they're too busy. This is like a sinking hole for them dealing with these complaints, and because the DMCA provides in the statute that as a provider of the platform, they are required to respond to and do the takedowns for anybody who legitimately claims that they're being infringed. And Sean constantly uses his 1992 book, even though many of the pictures that he's complained about aren't in the book, as the basis for his takedowns. And then people's accounts get canceled and they lose their following.
Right.
Unrelated to this case, I've dealt directly, like, for example, like with Amazon and with Meta, on behalf of other clients, and have windows into their internal attorneys that deal with this stuff, and it's a fascinating problem that they have to deal with. And it's just the volumes that we're talking about today are staggering, and it. Coming back full circle, how does a small studio differentiate themselves from the next small studio who might be 3 blocks away?
Right. Right. It's fascinating. I love that he's trying to claim the copyright to all of it based on the book, and it's not all in the book, right?
No, it is not.
Hey, Ken, you were Current Concepts before the lawsuit.
Correct. Yeah.
What made you change the name to Balanced Body?
Well, we were Current Concepts because we could sell or make anything under that name, and from waterbeds to,
Right. And for those who
equipment.
don't know, Ken at one point in his life made waterbeds and transitioned, thankfully, to reformers.
But just to kind of, put out there how scared I was is, it did occur to me that we could lose this thing, right? That we may not survive. I felt like we were going to. I had a really good reason to, but just to cover my basis, we changed our name from Current Concepts to Balanced Body because that name better reflected what we did. And at least if somebody was looking at a company called Balanced Body, they would think about something health-wise, not just like electricity or water. So yeah, that's why we changed our name.
It just adds that Kenny was already using Balanced Body as a trademark before he changed the name of the company. It was used on, I think, the whole product line of videos that were being
Right.
distributed at the time, and I think there were a couple of books at the time.
Right. It was the program behind the TSSR and the Personal Reformer.
The TSSR.
TSSR is this tubular steel studio reformer, which was the predecessor to the Allegro One.
Right. I was gonna
And
ask you to go down that road. And you, I was just gonna say, Gordon, does your wife still have it?
I have my sister's TSSR because she has no room for it.
Yeah. So you are now the owner of the TSSR. That's vintage. You need to hang on to that.
It's in the basement. It's now taken in parts because back January, I think I got what do we call it? The convertible, the reformer trapeze together.
The half chop.
No, it's a full. No, it's the
RTC. Yeah. Reformer
trapeze combo. So you could say, a lot of our naming comes from
which I absolutely love, and because it's got the new foot bar, and you can change the length because I'm very tall. I mean, it's so comfortable. The TSSR, my knees are a little too loaded.
Yeah, it's like having one of those old, what are they, the Alfa Romeos, those old little Alfa Romeos that when you see them every now and then, versus having a Cadillac.
Are you referring to The Graduate?
Yes. We're totally dating ourselves for anybody who's listening. Hey, so Ken, every time I sort of hear parts of this story unfold, I always think you did this at such great personal and professional risk. Take us back to what it was like to be in your shoes those 4.5 years. And we know that they weren't really nice shoes at the time.
Yeah, they're flip-flops, probably, right? Yes. For myself, I mean, I think when this whole thing happened, I think we had like 30 employees. That was the size of Current Concepts at the time, right? So we were really tiny. And I think that, I talked a little bit about what it was like already at the time, but it was just genuinely scary because our customers were scared. We were scared. It's like Pilates is really the perfect word because it describes, what we do, who we are, what we're teaching, the equipment that we're making. It's a guy who is a genius, right? And to be able to say, you can't use the word anymore. What are you going to do, right? It's kind of like, it's hard to believe, it's like if you said somebody where you can't, if you're a teacher and you say, well, you can't call yourself a teacher, right? It's a word that kind of describes what we all did. So to stop using it to figure out something else. And then to give the advantage of using that word to somebody that probably doesn't even deserve it and probably doesn't even care, but basically because they could buy it, just didn't seem right at all. So how it felt was pretty crappy, right? And you had to fight for this, and it wasn't really in your hands to do it. But the good thing is that there were a lot of customers out there that felt the same way that I felt, and that we're going to go on no matter what, and we're going to fight no matter what, right? And so, and it did bring the Pilates community together because I got to talk to people that I would have never talked to before. It also polarized the community in a lot of ways too, because there were the people that were going to work with Sean because they didn't want to deal with this trademark crap. And then there were people that just were adamantly against him too. And so there was those groups of people, and they didn't talk, on the non-Sean group, they were kind of coalescing, but the Sean group was like, no, I mean, this is in their brain, this is the right thing to do. And in some ways, it kind of, your brain kind of wants to go there because if you're going to teach Pilates, right, you want to know what that stands for, right? You want to be able to give it a name, right? And it needs to mean something. That all kind of makes sense.
Hmm.
But the problem is you can't control it by controlling a word that applies to everything else. You know, so what they wanted to do didn't make sense. How they wanted to do it just for the money didn't make sense, and it was just kind of a crazy time
I
dealing with
think I
it.
would add to that, though,
Yeah.
Kenny, is that the Sean Group was also operating under the misconception that by their controlling Pilates, they were controlling a method of exercise.
Hmm.
And they were constantly fed this disinformation because the one has nothing to do with the other.
Right.
And just to speed forward after the win and the birth of the PMA was really to bring all these people together, which is also what led to the PMA creating the exam, which is now what the National Pilates Certification Exam or something.
NPCP.
Yeah, because we spent years. I mean, I was on the PMA board during the early period there, working with them, trying to come up with, well, what's the proper standard? I mean, I can't tell you how many hours we spent in the conference rooms discussing whether it was 450 or 500 or 600 hours. Okay, just as one example.
I'm glad it was you, not me. So,
Well, I kind of got roped into it.
So here's a quick question for both of you. Can you just sort of bullet point what are the positives as a result of this lawsuit? Of course, we've talked about many of them, but if you were to give it just sort of a headline, what's the positive of this lawsuit, the initial lawsuit?
I think the number one positive is that we get to give credit to the guy who started all this stuff, and we get to do it easily and without having to do acrobatics.
But I think also is that if you think about the larger purpose, and that is for health and wellness for people everywhere, and by being in a position that we can call it Pilates, teach educators to educate other people to teach Pilates, we're doing the very thing that Joe Pilates wanted. And that was to spread the word. I mean, if you read in Return to Life, he basically wanted everyone to be able to do his exercises every single day. And then if you look at Around the Clock, there's another example. The list goes on and on. And the lawsuit has liberated the community to be able to do this, regardless of what camp you might still be in today. And there are still camps.
Yeah, that's well said, Gordon. I agree with you 100%. When you start to think about how many millions and millions of people are leading healthier lives right now because of Pilates, that's something to be really excited about.
Yeah, you couple that with the aging population everywhere.
Yeah.
I think I look a little older than that picture you put up.
It's a good picture. You look good now, Gordon. You look good now too. Okay. Well, thank you both. Certainly, when I filed that piece of paper away in a drawer, I was really hoping that I wouldn't have to revisit it, and I didn't. Thanks to both of you, and as a result, I mean, look at where Pilates is today. It's really astonishing. It's nothing either of you probably imagined at the time the lawsuit was being played out. Okay, rapid fire questions for Gordon. Gordon, what's your favorite Pilates exercise and why?
I love the footwork. You do the footwork series. It's such a wonderful combination of because I'm very long-legged, so I naturally have my own issues, including a knee that is still cranky, and it is just the best way to stretch, relax, and exercise in a very quick time frame. So I mean, there are days when I might just go down, quickly stretch out, and then go through a footwork series, and I feel like alive again.
What's your least favorite Pilates exercise and why?
That's so easy. The 100.
The 100. I have to say the 100 comes in. It's mentioned quite a bit. Why the 100?
It's when if you do it flat, you're okay, but the curl, the belly has to go away before that 100 becomes less hard.
All right. Do you have a quick definition of Pilates?
Well, To paraphrase just the Justice Felix Frank that occurred back probably 50, 60 years ago about pornography, not that Pilates is pornography, but he says, I know it when I see it. Pilates, I know it when I see it, but I think the key thing is that it is a method of exercise utilizing springs and your body in space to exercise all muscles and joints in a comprehensive and non-invasive way. And I
Oh,
think it
that's perfect.
completely differentiates itself from every other thing that goes on in a gym.
That's fantastic. We may have to use that and quote you on
Yeah.
that, Gordon. That was very good. Because it is, I think the big question today, as my next rapid fire question for you is, what's the future of Pilates? Is how does Pilates identify itself as unique and has a value add unto itself from anything else? And I think you summarized that beautifully.
Well, yeah, and thank you. I did just come up with it, though. That's not what was in my notes.
I bet you're good in a courtroom. Did anyone ever say that to you?
Well, you learn how to think on your feet. I think what's so exciting, okay, to me, because my involvement, because of the lawsuit, I've kind of been this attorney for so many of the education companies over the years, and I've been involved in them. And the point is that I have seen this explosion worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to all four corners of the globe, if you will. And it just seeing how it is touching so many more people that would never have happened if the lid was put on the use of the word Pilates. Because even though the decision wasn't relevant or was not, you know, affect people outside the United States, but because Pilates originated from the United States, it sets the tone.
Amen to that. Okay, Gordon, last one. What is the future going to be for Pilates?
I think that there are an amazing number of, I will call them second generation protege teachers that are really, coupled with the advances in the equipment or apparatus, that we are going to see more and more people doing more, getting the word out to more and more people, creating the opportunity for society to be healthier.
Right.
And not just relying on drugs and massage and stuff, but being active. I mean, look at the older group of people who are more active now today because of what they're doing. I mean, Lolita, who just turned 90, I mean, she exercises every day.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really well put. And I think, as you said earlier, that it's what Joseph Pilates wanted, everybody to be moving and exercising and to, yes, to know his method, but for society to be healthier as a result. And I think that's exactly where this has been heading, is heading, and I think to some degree has been successful already at. So thank you. Thank you both. Thank you both. That uncomfortable time has led for so much opportunity, and I think we're really just beginning to see it and feel it. So very grateful to both of you.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.